Dr. Joe, how are you doing
Hey,
today?
I'm great, Dale. Every time I get to see you, it's great. And Christmas time, so it's extra special.
It's perfect. It's really great. It's good to see you too. Always a pleasure. Once again, you're really putting some pressure on here from a position none of us really find ourselves in. I mean, we can reach out as lawyers, we can reach out as journalists, but you're actually in a space in government. You are, the health and fate of Florida citizens is in your hands. You're taking that very seriously, and I think asking really important questions. Let me ask you this. I mean, when we're looking at a tweet like this, you're going to get a lot of attention. What are the things that run through your head as you're planning on, reaching out, making a statement? Obviously, there has to be some, care with how you handle it. Are you backed by science? What made you feel bold enough to really address this issue in the way that you have?
Honestly, Dale, it's because it's a ghastly issue. This issue of the risk of DNA integration. It's something that historically has been very low risk, but it gets a little technical. But with these mRNA vaccines, you've got basically a passport into human cells. So whereas in the past, DNA would have a hard time ever getting into a cell, let alone getting into the nucleus of the cell, now you have these lipid nanoparticles that everyone was very excited about with the mRNA vaccines, that they carry mRNA in, but they almost certainly also carry DNA into the cells. So it completely changes the risk analysis. And this risk, however low it may be, is one that the FDA has acknowledged in the past, and somehow they think that they can get away with not assessing this time, and it's totally not going to happen.
You listed three very important questions you have. Let me read those. Let's just go ahead and read through those. Number one question: have drug manufacturers evaluated the risk of human genome integration or mutagenesis of residual DNA contaminants from the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines, alongside the additional risk of DNA integration from the lipid nanoparticle delivery system and SV40, that's the simian retrovirus 40 promoter enhancer? Has FDA inquired about any information from the drug manufacturers to investigate such risk? Let's just talk about this question. Breaking that down in layman's terms, what is your concern here with, lipid nanoparticle delivery, this SV40? What is it you're talking about, and what should, citizens be concerned about when they're looking at this?
Yeah, Adele, I got to tell you, I feel terrible talking about this stuff because I try to avoid dragging people through very technical scientific stuff. But it's important to be able to understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to explain it in a way that hopefully, whether you didn't have to major in chemistry or biochemistry to understand it. Everyone knows that DNA it's the building blocks of life, and in fact, it's from God. It's literally part of our connection with God, and the DNA is something that is important to preserve the integrity of. People are aware of the idea of mutations. Pretty much everyone's familiar with X-Men and fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on the serious side, it actually is important to protect DNA. If you don't protect DNA, say for example, if you are hanging out in CT scanners or for whatever reason exposed to a lot of X-ray radiation, it can cause things like changes to your DNA, it can cause cancer, it can cause other problems. And in this particular case, the issue that the FDA, by the way, have themselves acknowledged in the past, the FDA has acknowledged this with other technologies, is that we just have to do our due diligence to make sure that when we are using technologies that have the potential to introduce DNA into our bloodstreams, which is something that happens with some biological medications and some
Yep.
vaccines and some other type of medications. We just have to do our due diligence to make sure that that DNA isn't ending up somewhere we don't want it to be, and especially that that DNA isn't finding its way into our human DNA. Very simple stuff. And the problem here is that that due diligence hasn't been done. And the FDA wants you and me to believe that that's okay. And that is not okay. And really, there are expletives for that. I mean, it's so disrespectful to God's work and creation to
Yeah.
not do your due diligence with this type of work.
I mean, I was sitting here thinking about, like, how would I describe it? It's almost like if you look at a blueprint for a house. Our executive producer, Jen Sherry, is building a house right now. What happened if your 3-year-old got in there and just erased a couple of retaining walls and the house got built and suddenly some of the structures that were supposed to hold your whole house together aren't there? I mean, that's just like an idea of this house could collapse. The entire way that we're built, that sort of blueprint for our life is being potentially shifted, and no one at the FDA seems to care. Let's look at question number 2. All right, do current FDA standards for acceptable and safe quantity of residual DNA present as known contaminants in biological therapies consider the lipid nanoparticle delivery system for the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines? This is interesting because there's lots of studies now coming out about this floating DNA from the plasmids, the way they sort of made the RNA technology and was able to sort of multiply it. Now we're seeing that instead of it getting cleaned out as we were told the way the product's supposed to be made, we have all this residual DNA. And I understand you're asking, are we thinking about not only do we have these fragments of DNA, but we have this incredible delivery system that could be taking it, to places we don't want it? Is that essentially what you're talking about here?
Yeah, that's right, Dal. It's like if you're moving at the speed of science, sometimes people skip important steps.
Yeah.
And we certainly saw that with the trials that were done by Pfizer and Moderna, and we're seeing it now with the FDA. And this is just one example. I mean, obviously, there have been proper safety analyses that either haven't been released or haven't been performed by the FDA. But this is the risk of moving at the speed of science.
Right.
That you're playing willy-nilly and loose with this risk of human DNA integration. And by the way, Dal, we only know about 1 or 2% of what our DNA does. The rest of it, almost all of our DNA, is a complete mystery known only to God. So it's just, I mean, it's even beyond reckless what we're seeing. But unfortunately, it's not surprising considering the track record they've accumulated in COVID.
Yeah, and the third question that you ask in this very important letter is, considering the potentially wide biodistribution of mRNA COVID-19 vaccines and DNA contaminants beyond the local injection site, have you evaluated the risk of DNA integration into reproductive cells with respect to the lipid nanoparticle delivery system? There's a lot of anecdotal, call it anecdotal evidence of women having, issues with their menstrual cycle. I'm getting a lot of anecdotal stories about miscarriage. I mean, there's a lot of investigation that needs to be happening here. And to your point, it just doesn't seem like the FDA and the CDC or the NIH, these regulatory agencies that are designed to look into these things, they're not doing that. And it's so shocking because they know they rushed this product onto the market. They know they were taking a risk, but we're not in week 2 of release. We're not in the middle of COVID. Why are you still pushing booster shots when now time is telling us, and the science that is being done is saying, look, there's a contamination in here that we were told wasn't here, and it's in levels far beyond anything that have ever been approved, and you're doing no science on this and still promoting this product. I mean, I keep thinking to myself, Joe, that this is going to be written about. There will be somewhere out in the future, there will be a historical reference and a reflection on this, and they're going to say, what happened here? Why did all science stop? Why did so many professionals? Why was the Surgeon General of Florida the only Surgeon General asking questions?
Yeah, no, totally, Dal. There will be a reckoning eventually, and frankly, I think when the real damage has been totally accounted for, honestly, I'm not sure we're going to even have a Pfizer anymore. I don't think it's going to actually look the same way.